with the Lessons Learned podcast with my friend here, Chapelmon. It's it's a slow week for news now that we're coming down.
Yeah,
from
everyone's getting they've gotten their E3 out of their system.
yeah. Although we are getting a lot of speculation about this game or that game, or like what they're gonna be. It's like well, you gotta wait till they come they're released. So whatever they tell you now, it's gonna be just pure speculation. So it's not gonna be valid.
Hmm.
But people that's part of the hype machine, right? It's people want to know stuff that is essentially lies or damn lies. I was saying to friend Chapelmon here before we started playing that I am in fact finishing Dark Souls, and getting together in my head the thoughts about what I'm going to do. This I usually when I finish the game I do like a on the spot review, and I'm getting my thoughts together to see what is it that I'm going to do about what I'm going to highlight and all that. The review is not going to be as I say as high as I expected. Welcome to the podcast. Also having troubles with my Streamlabs chatbot. Thing about these chatbots, especially for Streamlabs, is they keep changing every time there's a minor change. I have to check the tokens, the authorization tokens, so I have to
Hmm.
do it again. It's like still working, but I'm sure that by tomorrow it'll be completely broken. So I have to check on that. So let's have a look at the news as they are. I think the biggest piece of news right now is the fact that the makers of PUBG, Blue One, I believe is the company, they dropped the suit against Epic Games, for their similarities to you know
The
PUBG,
battle royale.
Battle you're seeing PUBG and Fortnite. But in the process, we learned something very interesting, and that is that apparently the real reason for the lawsuit was that um Blue One claimed that they co-developed PUBG with Epic Games using their Real Engine, and that essentially what happened was that Epic Games took the information and data from PUBG and what they were developing and said, "Oh, you're making this. Okay, now we can make it better." Right?
Hmm.
So it was, there was I guess it's akin to industrial espionage.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they dropped the lawsuit in a South Korean court, so we'll never know if the allegations have anywhere near truth to them. I mean, we didn't see the evidence. We didn't get resolved in a way. No court, made a decision on this. So it's speculation, but it kind of puts a slightly different spin on the situation, right? Everybody's been putting the makers of PUBG as the bad guys, right, and
Yeah.
Epic as the good guys. Uh, and this is business, so it's rarely that clear cut. And also some of the other details about and comparing it to other lawsuits that the makers of PUBG have done in the recent past, especially with mobile games and the like. It seemed very much like a frivolous lawsuit. So
Yeah. And also I believe I just heard from like the Node that they mentioned that there's Tengen, there's a Chinese investor that kind of has a stake in both of the companies or
mm,
partial owner. So that's kind of interesting too. maybe they're the reasons why they stopped. But yeah, it actually kind of would have seen it, that entire like, oh, the Epic helped us kind of co-develop PUBG, and then they just kind of took the idea, probably what they learned from working with us, and just made their right a game, which is, it would have been interesting to see if they had any merit, but
but so far we don't know.
yeah, it even and again, even if that is the case, you'd have to prove it in court. You have to persuade whoever's presiding over it that
Hmm.
that's what happened.
I don't know the specifics of how South Korean corporate law works. In the United States, most of the time, depending on the case, it could be just in front of a jury. It could be a jury-based court case, especially if it's some kind of tort lawsuit. But most other, litigation between corporations in front of a judge. So again, I would. That's probably how much as I can hazard to guess how that would operate. I have no idea how it would be done in South Korea. Although considering that South Korea is a hotbed of video games, especially in the Asian market, I'm sure that they do have a lot of decisions and legal framework to do just that. And of course, probably the company felt that it was much better for them to do it in South Korea than do it in the United States. Also, the matter, and you mentioned this in our sort of chat and talking about this subject, money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can still have a valid case, but corporate litigation, all litigation really is expensive, particularly corporate litigation. And if you're looking down the line, although again, the PUBG has made them a lot of money, but even still, you can make a lot of money now. That doesn't mean that your coffers
are going to stay full.
are as deep as they are. And of course, part of the reason is that all this litigation is happening when you're basically seeing a sea change from PUBG's declining player base and Fortnite's rising player base. Perhaps, and that could be two reasons. I mean, you can say that just people are just moving away from PUBG, the specific game, but you can also say that there's also a limited pool, still in the millions, but relatively limited pool of people who are actually interested in battle royale games. Which, if that's the case, that means that remember, these battle royale games come from the same pool of people who were playing survival games. They came from the zombie survival specific genre and stuff like that. So we're still talking about a player base that may have increased under PUBG. Certainly, it made it more popular, but in the long term might not be as sustainable. In other words, if another game comes along that can take out Fortnite's throne, then they'll see their numbers go down. And it's one of those things where you talk about the big game. There's only one big game, and then everybody else is playing for scraps. Although there seems to be a lot of play through there.
I don't know. Maybe Anthem will be the next best thing.
I doubt it. I mean, I think Anthem is still playing for the Destiny Division kind of thing. Which, by the way, also heard that Division 2 is coming out. Destiny was also taking some hits in the player-based department. And the Division just looks like it's going to be more of the Division. More of the same.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I was talking to my cousin yesterday she still plays Destiny 1 and she plays Destiny 2. It's only because she has friends. And we actually kind of discussed this yesterday. It's like, are you getting Anthem? Maybe when the price is low, and if my friends want to play it. And I'm like, I'm in the same boat. I will get a copy if only you or your brother get one. Yeah. And want me to play with you. But other than that, I have no interest.
Which, for a game like, basically these are MMO lights, and I would put everybody who's watching this to go to Nerd Slayer channel later on.
Oh yeah,
on YouTube. Death of a Game. Time and time again, he has shown how MMOs just fail, and one of the things that happens is that either you begin with a very low base of players to begin with, a low population, you can't be sustained, or you have a high population count and then just drops sharply. These games, that's why I call them MMO lights. They require MMO-like numbers, not tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands, particularly because they're microtransaction driven. So the money that you're spending to make this game, you're trying to not only make up, but actually make real profits. I mean, this will, Anthem feels like EA trying to catch up again. They try to catch up with SWTOR to World of Warcraft, and it didn't quite work. They try to catch up to Call of Duty for the more time. With Battlefield, didn't quite work. and they're trying to catch up with Destiny and the Division, and it probably won't work as well as they're hoping they will. There's probably still
Yeah,
going to be
but
money there, but not as much.
yeah, but I will give it to Fortnite. At least I think the advantage it has over PUBG is that it's free to play. So even if you say your friends are all talking about, hey, I play PUBG, you should check it out. It's like, I don't know, it's not really my thing, and then I don't want to pay $60 or however much PUBG is. I don't know. I
Mhm.
don't really care either. But but say your friends are like, hey, we're all playing Fortnite, like you should play. It's free to play. You don't have to pay anything. You just download it. I'm like, maybe I'll give it a shot, and maybe that's how you get more people in. It's like, hey, it's free to try.
Yeah, I mean, if you have the thing about free to play is that it's free to jump in. Basically, that's what it is. It has a very low or non-existent barrier to entry, which means people can always try it a little bit and they get hooked. But PUBG, you gotta buy it. I think it's now on Steam sale for $19.99.
Hmm.
And and this is gonna sound weird, but to me, I found PUBG. I never actually got into PUBG yet. I mean, thinking about it, I find PUBG more interesting visually than Fortnite. I don't know. I don't. There's something about this sort of very cartoonish aspect of Fortnite that it just. I kind of did. I felt like I wanted to try it, but it's like nah. I actually want to play more like I like the sort of desert and bare bones aspect of PUBG. But PUBG basically is. I don't want to get into a game that is basically on the outs
Yeah.
or full of hackers. Although they finally region locked that. That's another problem that PUBG had. They didn't region lock, and then all the Chinese hackers got in, and well, that was a problem for a lot of people. So there you go. Talking about Fortnite, the well, let's call it saga of Sony locking out people to play, particularly to play in both with the Xbox and Nintendo continues in part because both Microsoft and Nintendo have released a series of commercials saying, "Oh, we can play together." Really needling Sony for not allowing the the gameplay sharing, at least in consoles. And I posted an article, a Reddit article about Game Informer, and I said commented before the take on heroes and villains and winners and losers. I didn't agree to it. I didn't agree with that take on it because
Hmm.
I think that by 2020, people are going to forget who I think Sony's going to come around. If Sony comes around by 2020, everybody's going to forget about it, right?
Yeah, it's going to be just the standard feature.
Yeah.
And then that article did kind of raise like some good points for why they would be against it. And not necessarily I agree 100% with them. But at the same time, I also brought up the point that I don't think, and I agree with, I don't think most console players care either way. For the majority of console owners on any platform, I really don't think they care
Hmm.
whether and whether consoles can crossplay with each other with the same software or not. Like I personally don't really care either uh, on a personal level, but I mean it is like a pro consumer thing, so I'm for it.
Hmm.
But on a personal level, no, I really don't care because I don't particularly play multiplayer games.
Yeah, and you raised a good point yourself when we're discussing this before the program. Sony basically, but Microsoft has never really been into the mobile. Well, mobile games. They've done a couple of mobile games, but never having a mobile platform for games, right? A portable,
Hmm.
not mobile, portable gaming. Never been into that themselves. Um, Sony tried with different machines, so that is being PS Vita, and they let that die because of Nintendo's dominance. That might be also, and then there's an whole story. There's also, I think, people forget that, especially when it comes to Nintendo, all the way back to the PlayStation One, there's been a bit of a rivalry between the two companies
Yeah,
because Sony was supposed to develop the first disc CD-ROM based um,
Nintendo console.
Nintendo console. Things fell through. Sony turned around and said, "Well, we'll make the PlayStation, which eventually became the PS1, as retroactively." and they took a dominant position in the Japanese market, and through there they basically taken out, then of course with Microsoft became the two consoles, manufacturers, with Nintendo playing catch up. I think when the calculation is Microsoft is like, we don't, which is ironic. Sony says that they don't worry about the Switch, but it seems like Microsoft is the one that is not really worried about the Switch, in the sense of they can see it as a sort of, there's some benefit to cooperation, right? If you're if you're home and your primary platform is either PC or the Xbox, you're gonna play in front of the TV, big screen TV, whatever. But if you're going out the door, you're not gonna take your Xbox with you, so they don't mind. I mean, they know that you're not gonna be carrying out this black box around to play games. You're gonna take your Switch, right? And when you get back home, you put the Switch in the dock to recharge, and you go back to the Xbox. I think that's the calculation that Microsoft has, right?
Yeah.
Because I think Microsoft, what they really want is they're focusing more on concurrent users rather than console sold. While Sony's still thinking about console sold, and I think they think
and
about
like and like microtransactions and the software side of it too.
And I think especially in the Japanese market, they still see very much, because Microsoft. That's another thing we haven't talked about, and people haven't really talked about, is the Japanese market, the home market. Microsoft has attempted time and time again to make inroads in the Japanese market, to no avail. Their sales are still in the single figures, right, percentage-wise. However, Nintendo has stayed strong in the Japanese market, especially with portable games. The kind of thing that Sony tried to do and failed to do with PS Vita and PSP Gold and all that.
Which actually, I think the PlayStation Vita is actually still pretty, still popular over there in Japan.
It's still being used, especially for quasi-adult games, I suppose. Titillating.
Oh yeah, games. a lot of visual novels still. They still release like new PlayStation Vitas out there with different editions and stuff.
Yeah, so I think that's the thing that Sony might say for the American market, because they don't have a portable system outside Japan that really, is selling at any point. They abandoned that openly. But in the Japanese market, that's a different story. And they don't want to encourage anything that would undermine their home market, which is sort of gives them a sense of safety and security when they launch to the world, right? If as happened before, Sony does poorly against Microsoft, say in the American market, they can always go say, well, in the Japanese market, which is our safe zone, we are still dominating. So we can generate revenue. We still have games. It's one of the reasons why I was, from Software, I didn't know that they made a lot of mecha games based on Japanese animes like Gundam and stuff like that. Most of those games they were for the PlayStation, and they never made it to the Western market. And I think that's one of the things also Sony does, is Sony kind of encourages these games to stay in Japan, even though, because they see, okay, this is Japanese market, we're not going to take the risk and waste the money to localization, stuff like that, to them to feel like they're just vaporware or failures in the American market that would taint
their numbers
in the United States and in North America and Europe and everywhere else, which is a shame, because I would love to play that on if actually there were more of those games that I could play on PlayStation, I might actually buy a PlayStation, because I love mech games. I love giant robots, especially transforming robots, Japanese anime. It was like, give me more of those games. There's also the fact that some of these games, there's a particular license, I'm going to talk about it for a second. This is the version. It's the Macross license in the United States. Harmony Gold owns Robotech, and it's still, lawsuits, another series of lawsuits that have to do with BattleTech and company FASA and all that. One of the things is that they still claim to have strict ownership of anything that is Macross related in the international market, especially the American market. So anytime they use those things in games in Japan, it becomes a bit of a problem when they export it. Hopefully, I think by their license will definitely end by 2021. We'll see what happens. And let's see other news. Let's see what other news that we have, because we really don't have a lot of news.
Actually, I think the one thing you mentioned that Microsoft, I don't think ever did a mobile thing. I think the closest thing they did, so didn't they try getting into the cell phone market with having their own like operating system for cell phones?
For cell phones and for tablets. And they
Yeah,
still sell tablets that are, have a Windows OS version for
yeah.
tablets, but it's not gaming. They never have.
No,
It's a
I don't.
lot.
I don't know if they. I don't know if they ever had like their own like little Play Store market version.
No, they have apps. They have an app store stuff like that, which
Yeah,
hasn't.
I know. I know. PlayStation tried like having their own mobile market too, with their own OS and their own like PlayStation mobile market with like games just specifically for that operating system, but didn't pan out. Actually, I think a couple of companies went belly up because of that because
They,
they lost the market once Sony kind of quit on
mm,
that.
wow. Talking about that is that the ongoing discussion is following that article. There was another article says that Sony might be considering, you know, opening up the for sharing of games. And like we said before, I
Oh
think
yeah,
it's PR. Right, this moment is PR. Right,
yeah. They're like,
um,
oh hey,
it's a thing.
it's a better response than what came out before, but it's still PR talk.
Hmm. Also, it's a news that you brought me from Chapamon that Life is Strange 2 is more expensive. The first chapter will be more expensive than Life is Strange, the original or the prequel out there.
Mm-hmm.
But they're softening the blow with a free visual novel game thing.
No, there's well, they the demo. It's supposed to be a standalone thing, like almost like a prequel or a like a prologue to Life is Strange 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yet it's labeled as Life is Strange 2 demo. Which is kind of interesting. I thought it was going to be its own standalone thing, and when I tried looking for it on the PlayStation Store, nope, it's like Life is Strange Demo 2 or Life is Strange 2 Demo. It's like, okay,
That's
I
about the adventures of such and such
yeah,
kid.
the awesome adventures of Captain Spirit.
Oh, we're supposed to be a
It
kid with telekinesis because he can move objects and maybe even.
no, so it's left ambiguous at the end. It's just the trailers make it seem like he's entering like these amazing worlds in his imagination, and it's depicted, like, oh, I'm on space now because I pretended I'm in space. That's not quite it. If you actually play it, that's all strictly in his imagination.
Oh, so he has no powers or anything like that.
No, the very end, there's something fantastical happens. He falls and he floats before he hits the ground, but it's not really clarify whether that was him or if that was a neighbor kid that just happened to be like there watching him.
Hmm. I don't know. But you mentioned the fact that the price is going to be higher,
$40.
$40, and the original
So
was about $20, I think.
so there, I believe it was 25. So if I remember correctly, the original was there. It's $5 per episode, or I'm sure it's like $20 if you bought like the entire season pass
Mm-hmm.
before. So for $5 per episode, let's just say you didn't want to go all in, and that's all you got. You got everything.
Mm.
But so Life is Strange Before the Storm, the prequel. So this was a smaller game. It's only 3 episodes long.
Mm.
I believe it was $25, and that's the deluxe version, and it came with all these outfits because you can dress your character up in it, and sometimes the characters will react to what you're wearing. But it's only 3 episodes long, and it was like $25.
Mm.
And yeah, and of course there's pre-order, and then there's like a super special outfit that just dresses the character up like she looked like in the first game for $1 more. And now we got a Life is Strange 2. Pre-order it now for 40 whole dollars. I'm gonna assume that it's 5 episodes long still. So now what does that come to? pull out the calculator because I don't feel like using my head right now. So it's
Mm,
$8 per episode now.
instead of 5.
Yes.
One could argue that they're improving something other, maybe. I don't
So
know.
so my husband watched me load up the demo, and he thought the graphics looked worse.
Yeah.
I didn't think so, but he thought they looked worse. And I'm like, no, it's the same style. It's got the colors kind of look vibrant and slightly washed off. So I don't like it looks this. It doesn't they. I would say the characters look less plastic-y, so that's an improvement in that way. But style-wise, it looks the same.
Mhm.
So graphics-wise, I don't think like they're putting more money into it. It's
Gameplay, maybe.
game. So the demo didn't have anything fantastical with its gameplay. No time rewind, so nothing technical like we saw in the first game. Maybe it will be there once the first episode is out, and because this is also not going to be a complete game, they're also breaking up into 5 episodes like before.
And no clue on exactly who are the characters, or we have returning characters, or
No, so I believe that we know for sure that the original 2 characters are not going to be in this game.
oh,
This is a completely different story, but it is the sequel. The I believe the boy and his father from the first game, and I assume all the characters that were briefly shown in that game are going to be in it. But story-wise, we don't know anything. It's still pre-order for $40. You get 2 exclusive themes for your PlayStation 4, and you get like merit badges that you get to stick on your backpack for your character. Exclusive bundle.
yeah, cosmetics, I suppose. Kind of reminds me of Call of Duty. They're also doing a thing. We talked about this before, where they're locking kind of content in their season deluxe pass thing that they're doing, and it's like,
What was that other game too that was it Assassin's Creed that, or no? There was a one game that was only going to release set things for like a special edition, or was it like a pre-order and you can get it exclusive anymore?
I think it was Call of Duty. Yeah, I don't know if anybody else is doing that. I'll have to check. Because I don't.
But yeah, this just got me thinking. It's like, so Life is Strange. I don't think anyone, either on Donut side and their publisher Square Enix, ever thought this game was going to be as popular as it was. They probably thought it was going to be like this small indie game that's going to get moderate success and not be the phenomenon it ended up being. And so I just noticed it's just so sad that seeing something got so popular. So let's release the spin-off prequel to the first game. It's going to be less episodes. We're going to charge more, and pre-bonus, deluxe edition, everything. Just all of a sudden it gets the AAA treatment, where apparently if you get successful, you got to have pre-order bonuses. You got to have pre-order like cosmetic bundle things that you sell separately. And deluxe editions. You get the standard edition and the deluxe edition. Oh yeah. So that was the other thing too. So the deluxe edition of the Life is Strange Before the Storm locked off a 4th episode. And this 4th episode,
oh boy.
So this 4th episode was actually even further prequel. So the 3 episodes it's contained story. But the 4th episode goes way back. It brings back the protagonist from the first game, because she's not in the prequel. She just oh yeah, I'm friends with her, and she moved away.
Yeah.
Well, as the story goes. But this prequel is essentially their last day together before she moves away. When they're much younger, and they get the original voice actors for both of them back.
Okay.
Because the Life is Strange Before the Storm didn't have the original voice actor because of the voice actor strike. so they got the original voice actor back, and they did this very nice and touching episode. Is way better than than any of the other three episodes, in my personal opinion. But you can only get that if you bought the deluxe edition. I'm not entirely sure if you could buy that as a separate episode.
One would hope, but mm,
Yeah, so it just got me thinking. It's just so this is what success looks like. It's like, let's break up our content and make everything. Is this really what it means to be successful in the gaming industry?
apparently. Well, we talk about that, but the patching culture, the thing about breaking up more and more, asking for more money for less content and squeeze more out of the rock, right? Uh, Going back to lawsuits and other legal matters, it seems that Blizzard is attempting to patent play of the game.
I saw that briefly, but I didn't actually look into it. So what is that?
Well, when you play Overwatch, you have a match. At the end of the match, the game captures what it decides is the play of the game, and it seems to be the technology seems to be sophisticated enough that it often gets a very cool sequence and stuff like that. Usually, it's when one character kills multiple characters, or something happens, or makes a save, or something like keeps somebody very low hit points alive. Those are the metrics. Essentially, it's like a rewind, like a play of the game, like you're watching baseball or football, but inside Overwatch. The thing is that, first of all, Overwatch is not the first game to do that, and not the only game to do that. And so it's kind of weird that they may try to patent it that way. And I would have put it here on the chat so people can see what I'm talking about. This is from the No. And it just seems weird and kind of restrictive in a way that doesn't endear people to this kind of situation. I mean, Blizzard particularly has been coasting on everyone else's mistakes for a very long time. Like, oh no, we're not part of the whole microtransaction, exploitation kind of thing. We're good people. Remember us from World of Warcraft? Yes. We're still good at this. So they, people haven't gotten close scrutiny. But if you keep doing these kind of moves, again, just like the guys at PUBG, a lot of the problems are, and Sony, a lot of problems are PR problems, right? Which I think, we're taking all the sort of news that we had done together, brings us to tonight's subject. And I may have put it for people who might come to the podcast saying, oh, you're talking about greed. We talked about corporate greed before. But I think the real problem is, in all this news that we talked about, is corporate arrogance. That you get into a position of leadership, and then you start making mistakes because you think you're invincible or infallible, or perhaps you're terrified that someone else is going to take your position, so you take this very arrogant position that you don't want to share, you want to play with others, you want to do this and that. So I want to do a little bit of way machine back in the 1980s. That's one of many examples of this. But dear to me, because I started with home computers. I started with the first computers that I had, and the computer I had was a Commodore 64. And yes, I am that old. But this particular story is not really about the Commodore 64 by Commodore Business Machine. It's about two machines that were released shortly after, the Commodore 116 and the Commodore Plus 4. They were originally designed to be sort of cut down versions of already relatively cheap machines, and that's what home computers were. They were sort of the machines for the home and home office and whatnot. And Jack Tramiel, the CEO of Commodore Business Machines, wanted, because he was the kind of person who was, on one hand, he was like, I don't have to make, according to some sources, I don't want to make all the monies. I'm good at making the monies, but at the same time, he had a monopolistic kind of view. He wanted to drive the competition away completely, and he was successful, or at least when it came to Texas Instruments and their home computers, and even some of the Tandys and stuff like that. and there was a Timex Spectrum, which was the American version of the Spectrum Z or Z, um, that was very popular in Britain and in Spain and some other places. It was a British company, Sinclair Spectrum, and it was selling at the time in the American market for as low as $59.
Hmm.
And this is 1980s money at a time where getting a full-on IBM PC could easily cost you anywhere between $1,500 to $3,000. The base price for, say, a Commodore 64 was about $299, $399. Of course, with everything else, it cost you close to about $600, $800. And Apple II was around the same price, but with the disk drives and color monitor, could close to $1,000. The version of the Spectrum wasn't really doing a lot of business. It was like a tiny thing with the kind of plasticky fixed keyboard, and it never sold well. They never made any inroads in the American market, but probably Jack Tramiel saw them as direct competition, and so he said, "I want to make computers like this. Let's develop them. Let's make them." And what they really wanted was sort of a very cheap sort of home office machine that had word processing, and that's where the plus 4 comes from. It has 4 software in ROM, right? But $50, $60, $100 at $100 or less. Jack Tramiel, within weeks of that, leaves the company or is pushed out of Commodore, and he goes to Atari. And then the weird situation happens where the first wave of 16-bit home computers comes out. The computer that was supposed to come out for the Commodore eventually became the Atari ST, and the machine that the Atari was working on, the computer division, which was still profitable, even though the game division had taken a huge hit with the fall of the Atari 2600 and never really recovered, became the Amiga series. Jack Tramiel goes there, does a couple of things. He also was someone who was very arrogant and burned a lot of bridges, which eventually hurt Atari in the long run. But when, free of Jack Tramiel as the CEO, the company says, "Oh, we have these computers, so we're going to charge like $200 and $300, right? Because we have this dominant position in the home computer market with the Commodore, might as well take advantage of it." And also, they wanted to diversify their holdings because they don't want to have just the one machine, right? Which was the C64. Problem with that is that these machines, for the price, were vastly inferior. Because basically what happened was that in the American market, to a degree, between the Christmas 1982 to the Christmas of 1985, the home computer became essentially the home console. Right? People were playing video games. Kids who had started playing video games in your, ColecoVisions and your Intellivisions and Atari 2600s, when there was the video game crash of 1983, the parents were, "Okay, fine, we're not going to buy another toy console thing. We're not going to do that." It's like, "Oh, but we want to have a thing." It was like, "Okay, I'm going to buy you a home computer because that home computer is going to teach you to be computer literate. Wave of the future, you're going to learn how to use computers, so we're going to buy this." Of course, when the kids got the computers, it's like, "Oh, by the way, it uses a Atari joystick and has a ton of games, so we're just going to keep playing games." And some people actually developed some very cool games and ideas and stuff like that. And the second wave of video game design, especially in the US and the UK particularly, came from the people who use home computers, like Elite. The design of Elite and other famous games came from that arena. But it became that decision to overprice a machine became Commodore's first big misstep. Another example from the era was that the first Apple computer that had sort of a point-and-click navigation system, which drop menus and all that, called Windows systems today, was the Lisa, and the price that it came out was $10,000 in 1984.
Damn.
Even at the price that you can get an IBM PC, which could easily goes up to $3,000, that's still over $7,000. And eventually, what would happen is that Steve Jobs was so obsessed with this new, operating system that he got the Macintosh out. And while Macintosh was a success, the way it was sold was that um, it was going to be the direct rival to IBM, and it never really was. It became a niche machine, especially for graphic design and photographic manipulation. That's why Photoshop and all that, were very popular in Macs. But that meant that they abandoned the Apple II line, their home computer line. In fact, the last machine they made was the Apple II GS, and that machine actually was more powerful than the first generation Macs. But because it was still connected to the idea of being a home computer, it was a lost raw, and a lot of entertainment and a lot of the video games that were being made for Apple products, well, they dried up because, video game designers, well, we can make video games for the NES, for the Sega Master System, for Commodores, for Ataris, for Amigas, for IBMs, and the IBM compatible and Windows compatibles. This Mac machine doesn't seem like something we can actually work with. And so the Mac from that and onward has always been relegated to second, even third place, or I will say right now, outside of the mobile market, mobile devices that Apple produces, which probably number one, number two, depending how you make it. Apple products for nearly 20 years were second. Were not even second. They were like fifth in line for any video game to be made.
Oh yeah, that's
even though many of the games, especially many of the games that were made in the 1990s for other platforms, were actually made in Macs, which is bizarre, but there you go.
Yeah.
And we have a long history of hardware and software, particularly makers, mostly in hardware recently, of just being very arrogant. I mean, again, look at what happened with Nintendo and Sony. Nintendo had a dominant position vis-a-vis Sega when it came to consoles. They wanted to make a new console with, CD-ROM, because that was a hot thing in the 1990s, right? Everybody was getting to the CD-ROM thing. They worked with Sony because they had the patent for CD-ROMs, to make a machine. They have a fallout, and I think the story I heard is essentially Nintendo was, the way they were going to split the profits was going to be something like 70-30 or 80-20, something like that. And then Sony's like, we put all the technology, we have the patents, we're the ones really, we're basically developing this console for you. Because if you've seen the prototype of the Sony Nintendo, it's very much a Sony machine. The form factor, everything else, and partly because, of course, you have to put in, the disc has to dominate. And very much, you can see sort of traces of the PlayStation with PlayStation 1. That fell through. What happened was Sony make their own consoles. It's like, oh, well. And all of a sudden, Sony became dominant in that market. And eventually both Nintendo would come back later on, but it would take them decades, or nearly a decade. Sega got swept away by the year 2000, and then Microsoft would come in again, right? And then you see the back and forth between Sony and Microsoft. And one of the things that tends to happen every generation is that whoever's dominating the generation seems to get so arrogant that they lose to the person who ate humble pie the last time around. And I wonder, why does this really happen? I mean, it's like people have so short memories, or am I exaggerating the importance of arrogance in video? What's your take on it?
So I think it's mostly just them forgetting living in the moment and forgetting the lessons of the past, because look at Sony right now. Everyone's kind of looking at Sony. It's like, didn't you learn anything from the PlayStation 3 where you were so arrogant that like, oh, we don't need to tailor ourselves to people, we don't need to make our consoles affordable for people to buy, that we're Sony, we're mega popular, everyone ate up our PlayStation 2s, we'll be fine. And it hurt them a lot. They were selling those consoles at a loss, and it took them a while to get caught up to the Xbox, and they were overtaken by the Xbox. And right now, I think we're. Now, of course, what happened at the beginning of next generation? You had the Xbox, or you saw Microsoft become so full of themselves. We're like, well, hey, you know what? This console needs to be online all the time. It won't work with the Kinect without the Kinect 2 plugged into it.
Mhm.
And if you don't like it, well, you have the Xbox 360. Don't buy our console.
Yeah.
And
And people bought the PlayStation 4.
yep.
They made the jump.
We also sort of saw that with Nintendo at the same time. It's like, hey, we're on top of the world with the Wii as well. And then it's like Wii U, people will buy it. People didn't understand what the hell it was.
And not just on the hardware, also we've seen something on the software side as well. I mean, Call of Duty right now with Activision, it isn't. I mean, still making big numbers, just like PUBG is still making huge numbers, but they're taking hits. Right, they're losing that install base. The numbers for Call of Duty, especially for the sort of off, secondary games like Black Ops and stuff like that, are not looking as great as their main game. Sure, the World War II Return to World War II made a lot of money for them, but Black Ops is looking like it's not gonna make as much money for them, especially with all the shenanigans with season passes and deluxe editions and all that they're doing it. We seen it with BioWare. We talk about BioWare a lot. I think they mismanaged the ending of Mass Effect 3, and that certainly did hurt Andromeda. And also the fact that EA decided to shift the game to a division that didn't really know how to make, didn't have the experience to make and BioWare style RPG. They make DLC, but that wasn't exactly the same thing. And there were some other problems. It's EA chasing the big dream. With SWTOR, we're seeing it again with Anthem. All those companies. I think it's very interesting. I think there's also examples of companies not falling for their own arrogance, not being, at least in public, not falling for like Blizzard. Blizzard should be, by all intents and purposes, dead right now, because World of Warcraft was so dominating that if they had fallen into that corporate arrogance, they would have said, well, we have World of Warcraft, we have 8, I think their peak was 13 million install base. We can do no wrong. But as their numbers dwindled, they said, well, let's put out another StarCraft. Let's let's do Heroes of the Storm. Let's do Overwatch. They said, okay, fine. We cannot be the company that just does one game. Although they're trying to do the whole Blizzard style, everything looks like Blizzard, everything plays like Blizzard kind of thing. Like I always call them now the Disney of video games, right? They're trying to do that. But yeah. I think Microsoft also with Halo I suffered that a little bit as well. The Halo, especially Halo 2, broke all kinds of records. And I think they expected Halo to be always going to make those records. And again, Halo is selling, but it isn't the system seller it used to be. And they're like, it's declining. People are like,
yeah.
More
another Halo game.
Yeah. Kind of happened with Ubisoft with the Assassin's Creed game, although they kind of caught it. They're like, okay, we're gonna take a year off, and that seemed to be at this time enough for them to recoup their image, because I think this we're talking about. We're talking really about image. We're talking about PR, right? We're talking about some of these movements are boneheaded, but also I think it's not so much what they do, but how it looks. Because going back to Microsoft stuff, always online stuff like that, well, in essence, at the time I didn't agree so much with it, but yeah, part of it was how they presented it. Like you mentioned, it's like, oh, well, if you don't want to play, go back to the 360, whatever, stay with that. It's I think that's what arrogance is a situation, because it's like we're in a position where whatever we say goes. And
Hmm.
people go like, well, how about no? And then when people go like no, it's like, well, I mean, Life is Strange, jacking up the price, right? Nobody, you said it yourself. Nobody expected Life is Strange to be as successful as it was. Now they're like, well, we're gonna charge you more,
Yeah.
and it's both
Uh,
greedy and arrogant, right? And but there's another question: does corporate arrogance really have you know, a long reach? We see Microsoft suffer, right, because of what they did at the beginning of this generation, but then we've seen it turn around. So, do people really have a long enough memories or care enough for the last slight?
yeah. I think that's going to be remains to be seen, especially with EA after the entire Battlefront 2 fiasco with the loot boxes and whatnot. Um, honestly, to me, they're always going to go after the big publishers like EA are probably always going to chase the big whale, and it's all going to be about the money and what pleases the investors. It's never going to be what's right or what is best for the players or best for artistic integrity. Bioware's favorite word.
I think where arrogance really hurts is when you're a double A developer that hits it big, or indie developer that hits it big, right? Your daisies and stuff like that. Oh, we because they don't have as much room to maneuver, and even when they hit it big, they still have the one product, right? And so they don't have a lot of room to maneuver. So if people get ticked off about them when they try to improve on their game or sustain it or launch a new product, or like, how about again, no.
Hmm.
And
And even when they're successful, look at what happened to Ninja Theory. It's like Hellblade was really good, critically received, and it sold really well. And it was the big everyone cheered it as, hey, it's like a triple A game, but it's on a double A budget, and they got bought out. Or I don't know, maybe they sold out.
well, yeah, I don't want. I don't know if that's an example of corporate arrogance necessarily. I think it's
It's
more.
not
Go ahead.
it's more of a cautionary tale. It's like, no, hey, once something kind of becomes successful, it's like, like it seems like the other corporate like companies are like, it's like, hey, we see you got a shiny new ball over there.
Yeah, I think that might be an well. Although I think that is not so much the reflection of Ninja Theory necessarily, but of the again the AAA industry and
Yeah,
wanting
that
to control everything. And I think that's also another form of corporate arrogance. Because, for example, going back to the again, Dead Horse, Bones, etc., etc., the example with Andromeda, I think EA says like, okay, we got a Mass Effect, whatever. Not only would they showed corporate arrogance in mishandling the end of Mass Effect 3, but also said, well, we already have this formula. It's always gonna sell no matter what. You
yeah,
guys, you
this
guys over there can take care of it. We don't care about it, right?
you guys that we keep in the broom closet
Hmm.
and give you the tiny projects. You handle this AAA. Well, it's Mass Effect. It'll sell just on its name. That's
Yeah, and I think that's might be something that actually hurts Anthem, right? Because I think if you look at what they're presenting, I think they're just running on the idea that it's Bioware, and
mhm.
Bioware always sells, right? It's the golden goose, like the eggs always lays the egg, except that as of late the eggs are more silvery than gold. Still selling, but you know, um, I don't know. I mean, I think they're cooking their own goose a bit too much, you know.
Yeah, but I think the main issue with like whether corporate arrogance ever remembered. Mm, the thing is, most of the mass populace that buys game don't really pay that much attention to video game news and video game ups. You know, the the dilemma of the week
Mm-hmm.
or controversy of the week. So I think it's really hard to keep up the pressure on companies like that, especially when we live in this world where news, we're constantly bombarded with news and things can stay fresh in our
Mm-hmm.
head.
Yeah.
And it's like I was just out shopping and I saw like a car with like Red for Ed on there. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. That was a thing. Is that still a thing? I don't know.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that's another thing. I've been watching a couple of videos about the problems for GTA 5, and Rockstar was always known as sort of the bad boys of, and still are known as the bad boys of video games. But in many ways, they kind of stay humbled, right? They had a product, they had a formula, they constantly improved on it. And then GTA 5 came out. When it came out, it was the biggest game ever. One of the most expensive, but also the biggest games. It's still one of the biggest games ever. I mean,
Mhm.
it's kind of an MMO thing, and it's another company that gets a lot of passes, even though their microtransactions economy is horrible, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about golden gating entire content, like gate after gate after. I mean, the prices you have to pay to get the cars and stuff like that. The toys that make the sandbox cool that in other games you would get just by playing the game, right? I mean, the old games didn't even have DLC, for that matter. They were not. They would give you a game and that was it, right? And now it looks like GTA 5 might be running its course. I mean, it's 5 years, so 5 for 5, I suppose. But Red Dead Redemption 2 might come out, and I think it's gonna sell well initially. But I don't know if the audience that likes Red
Hmm.
Dead Redemption is exactly the same audience that likes GTA.
Yeah.
Just because they're quote unquote sandbox games. For example, I love GTA, but I started playing Red Dead Redemption, the original, on the Xbox 360, and I was like, this is for me, and I haven't picked it up since.
Yeah, it's almost like saying like it's exactly like saying, "Oh, hey, I don't know if the audience that likes Mass Effect would like Dragon Age because
Mm,
they're two separate genres. They might have the same creator and sort of the same BioWare flair to it, but that doesn't mean that you would like that's just because you like the space opera doesn't mean you'll like the fantasy opera."
mm. Yeah, I think it depends. I think it's all about timing and specific products rather than long term corporate. Although that can also if in long term corporate problems, it's one of those things that adds up to the problems of the company rather than the thing. But it can certainly become the thing when it comes to a specific product or even a franchise, right? It becomes tainted, I think, and that could be a lasting effect therein. I was thinking about another series, and I had it in my tip of my tongue um that was going through that, and I was gonna Far Cry, but Far Cry is still doing very well. It shouldn't, but it is. Um, and uh, and so I think again, when you talk about a smaller company or indie company, especially in the software side, or you're talking about a specific franchise, yeah, I think corporate arrogance can really hurt it. But when it comes to the big triple A's, it's more of I don't know. It's a cumulative effect, I suppose, um, but necessarily long lasting. I think that's my final thought on that. Well, we're basically about 2 minutes to the end of the hour, so we're gonna do the shout outs and goodbyes. So we start, of course, with Monsieur Chapelman. Monsieur Chapelman, where we can find you on the interwebs.
You can find me at Chopamon pretty much anywhere. I am Chopamon on YouTube, and I am Chopamon underscore Aragon on Twitter and Twitch.
And of course, you can find me here. This week we'll be working very, very hard to finish Dark Souls Remastered for the PC. We're in the final boss, so if you want to see how awful I do and get swatted around by a powerful boss, you can watch me do that. And then, of course, you can see in the lessons learned one. The one is important, and lessons learned on YouTube, where I sometimes post the stuff I play on here over there as a rebroadcast. And we are at just 3 followers. Just 3. Just 1, 2, 3. Just very easy. 3 followers to hit that 50 follower goal and the road to affiliate. So if you haven't followed yet the channel, or you think you like this content and want to share it with your friends and family and loved ones, maybe just tell them to stop by, press that sub button, and will help me a lot on the road to affiliate. So thank you all for coming, and as always, we'll see you when we see you. Have a good night.
Good night, everybody.